I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 277th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today's panel will discuss should the media, particularly the television media, give detailed coverage to the people and organizations who provide the logistics, motivation, finances, and other resources to large groups who demonstrate and often attack individual organizations with whom they disagree. Today's panel begins with Patty Haskins, retired math teacher at Wadsworth Senior High School and former member of the Wadsworth City Council. Next is Mike Reese of Howard Hanna Real Estate and newly elected to the Wadsworth City Council, followed by Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, then Susan Hanlon, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and retired dean of the College of Business at the University of Akron. Patty, do you think it's time the supporters and the sponsors of political unrest has become so pervasive to be called out by name and motivation by the mass media?
That's kind of an interesting question. I think that presently, as far as coverage of protests, and I wouldn't necessarily call it unrest, I would simply call it demonstrations and or protests that are occurring, and they do get, I think, plenty of coverage. I think you're more concerned by who is paying for this and who is backing it. Now, if you listen to Fox News, all of the unrest, as you speak of, or all of the protests are all paid for by George Soros, and that he's paying I know they recently stated that the No Kings protests that occurred in June and what is it, October, that Soros paid each of these people $1,000. Now, while I have no doubt that Soros did not contribute, and he did contribute to organizations which went on to funnel money for signs, for permits, whatever, there were a total of 12 million people that showed up at those two rallies. And I think Soros, I looked up Soros's net worth is $7.5 billion. If you take 12 million people and pay them $1,000 each, that's $12 billion. So obviously he couldn't afford to pay them. I think that kind of rhetoric is ridiculous.
Patty, don't you think we should know more about George Soros?
Well, I think we know pretty much about George Soros. And I'm not sure, where he comes from, what he stands for. He's made no bones about that. I actually have more concerns than payment for those types of things with political contributions that are made that we have no idea where they're coming from. Granted, there are organizations that can be hired. And this is one of the concerns, that there are organizations that can be hired to provide protesters or participants for various rallies. And as a matter of fact, I saw a gentleman on Fox News a couple months ago that represented one of these companies, owned that company, and provided people that would be paid to show up at different rallies. Unfortunately, the talking point that Fox wanted to get across was that the Democrats were doing this, and this gentleman very clearly said that both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, hire him to get people to show up at different rallies. But I think in most cases, those rallies are people that, like the people that showed up at No Kings rallies. Yes, there was money put in to pay for signs, to pay for permits and so forth. But the people that showed up because they saw an email, they read on Facebook about the rally, they were in tandem with the thoughts of that particular rally, and then showed up. again, my major concern with funding of things, though, would be for funding of political campaigns, because of future, super PACs. Now, right presently, if you have run a campaign, and everyone on this panel is quite well aware of this, I'm sure, there are numerous financial sheets that you have to fill out explaining to the government exactly where every dollar comes from. And that's pretty much what happens on the local level. However, when you get to the national level, you have super PACs, which do not have to declare where they're getting their money from. And unfortunately, what's happened is we have no idea where the money is coming from to promote these politicians, which I think makes a big difference, because you would think that if someone donated $1 million to your campaign, they might have influence on you. We have no idea where that money's coming from and how that politician might be then beholden to that person. Also, it allows for foreign entities and corporations to come in and influence a future politician whose vote then might be influenced. As far as a protest or a demonstration, I think people understand what those demonstrations represent and the point that they represent and what they're trying to get across, whether it be a No Kings rally, where it be a right to life protest or walk in the nation's capital, whether it be the rally on January 6th that stormed the Capitol. People knew what these people wanted, and funding for that, I don't think, knowing where money is coming from necessarily does not mean that those people aren't out there for a particular reason and trying to get an issue across. So we, know what their influence is.
Yeah. Well, I think my issue is with the media in general. That we learned more this past week about a kid that planted some pipe bombs that never went off than we do about other important issues of the day. Mike, what do you think?
Well, the media, okay, first of all, TV is kind of dying, so we all know that. So, as far as television media, I think online media is probably more of a problem now. But as far as TV media, what are the TV, they're big news organizations that, now have channels that are running programming 24 hours a day, and they become less about news and more about entertainment,
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest problem, is that, you're trying to fill this space up. So you're bringing everybody on, no matter what kind of crazy nonsense that they have to say. And people will take, opinions as facts, and they present them as facts. And I think that's another huge problem, is that, it's hard to filter out what's true and what's not true anymore. And nobody's going to sit there and fact check everything that they say. It would be impossible. So it's easy to get disinformation out. And this is on both sides of the aisle, I think. You have organizations like Fox, you have CNN, and yes, they have, they both kind of fit in their specific viewpoints. Fox is obviously more right leaning and CNN is more left leaning. So let's bring on, the new guy of the day, to talk about whatever hot topic is out there that's got everybody up in an uproar. And it really has done nothing to bring people together. I mean, it further divides people. Online media is the exact same way. You're just bombarded, and I'm guilty of it. I'm on my phone, all the time, and most of us are. And you're just bombarded with political stuff all day long, and it really it's designed to divide you. And if you look at a lot of these political posts, you'll see something, oh, I agree with that. Pull up and see where that Facebook page, for instance, is located. 9 times out of 10, it's not even in the United States. It's in another country, based in another country. And these are literally made to sow division, and it's a lot of that going on. You have organizations that I'm sure you guys Turning Point USA is a big one right now because of the Charlie Kirk assassination that's been in the news. Now, this is something that a lot of people outside of maybe college age students had no idea what it was until, Charlie Kirk was assassinated and it really was pushed in the national spotlight. And those organizations, in my opinion, are also organizations that divide people. And I think that that's maybe the number one problem that we have in this country politically.
I think so too. Uh, Bryan, when I think about, well, you're a business guy, and you're in finance and economics and so forth. Whenever we think about business, we think about supply and demand. And our media is concentrating on the supply side and the drug wars and paying very little attention to the demand side. That's my own personal problem with the media right now, is that they're not paying enough attention to the right things. What do you think?
Well, I think you're onto something here as far as the demand for drugs, but I don't want to get off topic too much. But I will interject that I'm all for interdiction efforts that send a nice little missile to a drug running boat off the coast of Venezuela. I really don't care where that drug's going to. Some people try to argue that it's not going to the United States, it's going to somewhere else. So let's just leave the fishermen alone. It's obvious we have sources and methods that they don't want to disclose before they interdict with a missile to the boat. But I think Mike brings up a good point as well, in that the news really isn't the news anymore. It's what I would consider clickbait. You get a headline.
Considered what, Bryan?
Clickbait. It's clickbait.
Clickbait.
They want people to engage. They want you to click on that story.
I see.
And it's amazing to me. And I've been listening to these podcasts. Maybe it's to my detriment, but they collect all this information about how long that person stays on that page, even down to the seconds. And they design these stories. Maybe you might want to consider them news stories, but most of them aren't, so that it gets that person to go to that site for however long. And they build this huge data set of information that they use against people. The algorithm is actually feeding you things that you just want to hear. So when it comes to the financial end of it, I really would like to know who's benefiting. I'm sure it's, the folks that own Google and Meta and all those that, they sell that particular program to an advertiser. It says, listen, we're going to get your advertisement in front of 100,000 eyes over this particular period of time. How much is that worth? And it bleeds over into the news. Just recently, the Washington Post led with a story that was totally false. And that was the story that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, made the decision to take out a boat that had 2 survivors on it. And that the admiral that was in charge of it, felt some sort of pressure. That was totally false. That never happened. And that's what I worry about, is that news organizations take it upon themselves to create news that has no fact, nothing factual about it, and they run with it, and it goes viral. And next thing you know, we have people that are using that story to somehow pass legislation. So I'm concerned about those types of things. And in my business, full disclosure is that's the what we all have to worry about. My conflicts when I sit down with a client have to be disclosed. I don't see it being an issue. You can put a disclaimer out there, but it's important for people to know where the news is being generated from, and how the news is curated to affect a certain population. And the fact of the matter is, it works. It's not something that you can excuse anymore. I remember taking some marketing classes way back in the day, where at the University of Akron, where they talked about the type of music that grocery stores played while you were grocery shopping. And you sort of laughed at that. It's like, how does that affect people? But it does. And they've fine-tuned it with social media and algorithms to push your individual button. And that's what's kind of amazing to me when you talk to different people. Like if you talk to Patty, and if Patty didn't watch a variety of news programs, she would have a totally different view as to what's happening in the United States right now. We have some friends that they just watch, certain programs, and to them the world is coming to an end. It's just a matter of time before martial law, and oh boy, and it's like, whoa, where's that coming from? Well, that algorithm is basically throwing that stuff at them. So that's some of the things I'm concerned about when it comes to media, social media. It would be nice to know where some of these things are coming from. And a lot of the stuff is coming from these bot farms in Russia and China. I mean, China's got it down. That's one thing. China has it down. They have controlled a population of 1 billion or so people through social media masterfully. And it's not good. It's not good. I'm not saying it, but when you look at what they're doing with their social media platforms, it's scary. So.
Okay, Susan, now it's your turn. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I don't know what to think really, because nothing's true, right? Nothing we hear, nothing we see. So I'm going to go back to your original question about, who are these? I think the question that you're asking is, who are the protesters? So we see a film clip on the news or on online about protesters, about a protest or a demonstration, and you naively think it's a bunch of people that really showed up because they care about whatever the issue is. But then one way or the other you find out, well, some of them were that, but a lot of them were, like you said, paid to show up. And I do think the media should tell us who's paying them to show up. The issue is the media is too lazy. Like that would take a lot of work to actually talk to a bunch of people there and find out the truth. And then, and then work backwards and find out the truth. They don't want to do that. They just want video that they can put up for, 10 seconds. And what they really like the best is if they don't even have to shoot the video. They like it if you send them your video. And of course, every time you see something on television about, a fire, and they have all this, all you see is people standing around with their phones, taping it, recording it. And at the end of every newscast, there's almost always, well, not every, but oftentimes they have a little thing that says, if you have something you want us to know about, if you have something you want us to share, send it there, because then we don't have to do the work. I mean, I just think I don't know what people who are in college to become journalists are being taught, but I don't think they're being taught much about how the world works or how to actually find out things. I think they're being taught, how to look good on camera and how to, do this and that. And like, I get so frustrated when I watch the news. If they'll have something interesting, but they don't answer any of your questions. And at the end, you have more questions than you have answers. You'll be like, but why didn't they tell us this? But why didn't they tell us that? Because literally, they don't want to spend more than 30 seconds on it. And they just want to go on to the next thing. So I just think, not just with protests, but with anything political. I mean, we might as well be back in the 1700s where nobody even had newspapers, and the only way you knew what was going on was what your neighbors told you, and so you didn't know. much of what was going on in the world. I feel like that's the way we are, even though we supposedly have more, instant coverage, blah, blah, blah. It's very, and I feel bad. Like, I worry about young people who, they believe everything. And I'm not sure they're being, I mean, I challenge my grandkids are only 9 years old, but every once in a while they'll spout something off and I'll be like, what, where did you hear that? Or why do you think that? And then I grill them on, but that's not necessarily true. And I'll try and give them an example. But I don't want to create a bunch of, a couple of little cynics. I don't want to do that to them, but they're so gullible and they really do, think things are true. And yeah, that's, I think your example was one example of just this mountain of things that we really don't know. And so I don't know, until it affects you, I guess you just move along. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Susan, you mentioned journalists, and I question whether that is a dying breed, because people that claim to be journalists are not journalists in the true sense. The journalist is the one who looks for the facts, hunts down a story, reports it. That's a dying breed. What we have now are influencers, and everybody thinks that they're a journalist.
Right.
They're not looking for journalists.
And
They're looking for personalities.
Somebody made the comment that they make the news. They don't find out. They don't investigate.
Right.
They create their own news
and just give their own opinion on things, as opposed to actually being the Chet Huntley of their time.
Right.
And present the facts and let the viewers then decide what they feel and what they think about, rather than be
the only time
down
you're
the
ever
garden path.
hearing actual news is if you watch like your local morning news. That's about the only
Well,
time you're hearing actual news.
That's what
Even that they have feel good stories and
that's because,
but at least they're presenting things that happen.
No, in some cases those local news, and I've seen reports on this, if they belong to a greater outlet, they are given scripts to read. And I've seen cases where the same story was presented for the same 2 minutes with the same exact words from every little subsidiary across the country.
And sometimes you'll even
especially for national news stories.
Sometimes you'll even see video that isn't current. Like they'll show, I don't know, some weather event or something like that. And it's like it's not even that's
footage.
Like they'll show it in the winter and it's a spring video.
I think the one that I like is the newscaster is like in a canoe and they're doing it like the flooding is so bad.
Yeah.
And there's this little kid walking behind them.
Right.
I have seen that.
Yeah. That was like, there was one from Ocean City and where during this last round of hurricane weather, and the guy was there and we, all kinds, because we have a home in Ocean City, New Jersey. And, we were getting emails from everybody because it was on the national news about the terrible flooding. But if you look closely in the cross street right behind that guy, there were cars going by.
Yeah.
Does anybody watch News Nation? And is it any different?
I don't.
You watch it?
I probably watch it.
I didn't notice a huge difference. I know you like that station. You watch it a lot, don't you, John?
Well, the jury is still out for me.
Okay.
They have a bunch of people that work for other networks that disobeyed and expect them to be different. And I haven't. There are very few news people that I really feel confident about. Trey Yingst is one of them, who on Fox gives accounts of what's going on.
Who is this?
Israel. Trey Yingst.
So, what do you guys think about the New York Times?
I don't have an opinion because I don't really read it.
Yeah, I think they took a real big hit when they fired Barry Weiss,
Yeah.
and she went
Yeah,
out
but
and started her
They
own
do
thing.
seem to have, I subscribe to it online, and they do seem to have quite a few like reporters that you've never heard their names, but they have very specialized areas that they really dig deep on stuff. But then I'm like, do they have some kind of bias? Like they don't seem to, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Susan. I think they do have reporters
Yeah.
that that are biased, but
Yeah.
they do some deep dives on a lot of
They
issues.
do.
They've had some great reporting.
Yeah.
It's the same with every newspaper outlet. Unfortunately, people don't trust newspapers anymore.
Right.
I have a
don't
couple
read them.
relatives that
Don't read them.
watch Fox News all day long. I mean, one relative, he'll just sit there with it on all day long.
Ooh.
He is afraid to go or do anything because they got him so convinced
Oh yeah,
that the world is a scary place. He won't go to a city because of how dangerous they are. And I'm like, you
yeah,
got to get out.
Yeah.
Get out more.
yeah.
Yeah.
What I find kind of interesting is, and I think it goes to the, sort of like, are protests organic?
Yeah.
Most of them aren't.
No, they're not
Because
organic.
all the signs are
No.
the same. Well, I'm not saying I like or take enjoyment, but the ones where they're protesting in front of the ICE detention facility.
Ooh.
There are 5 cameras to every protester. They're all
They're
set
planned.
up.
All of them are planned.
And you got to get you've got to get the one guy that's going to stand in front of the van, and they're going to warn him and warn him and warn him. But they don't show you the warnings. All they show is the pepper spray in the face.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So the sort of the news is this poor lady was just protesting her right in front of the ICE detention, and these guys came out and pepper sprayed them. You don't get the whole story,
No, you don't know what the whole story is.
Yeah, when you see the
not
whole
And they
much
also
video.
make them bigger than they
Yeah.
are. I mean, I've seen coverage of this, people complaining about the protesters that are out there, and they're saying, "Oh, they're so," and you go down and you look, and there's 5 protesters,
Yeah,
and like you said, 27 cameras,
yeah,
and it's not a big deal. It's
yeah,
people are trying to make it a bigger deal than it is.
What
yeah.
I hear you all saying is that we don't know what's going on.
We don't.
Now we're all driven by the algorithms that are out
But
there.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure anybody ever knew what was going on. Like, I read a lot of history books, and Mike, I'm sure you do too. But the one I remember reading was what the awful stuff that in the Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, that time frame, like they out and out printed lies. Like
yeah.
Thomas Jefferson's daughter was afraid to go any place because of all the stuff they printed about her father that it just was not true. And
Yeah.
even one of them, I think it might have been Jefferson, like he wrote, or one of them wrote under a pen name about other people, and it was all lies.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, here's a good example: the Boston Tea Party. I mean, what do you know about that? They were acting crazy, throwing tea in the harbor.
Well, I'm
But if
sure
you
when they
read
paid
accounts from when it was there, it was planned, it was organized, it was orderly.
Yeah.
So the myth is often
Yeah.
a lot more exciting than the event.
Right.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think of the demonstrations in the 60s, and that was just a bunch of kids that, I mean, maybe 10% of them really knew why they were there and protesting. The rest of them were just like, hey, this is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah. Yeah, Betty.
yeah,
Betty, were you one of the ones that knew why you were there, or you were just there
Right.
for the hey, there's the
I
party?
knew why I was there, and
Okay.
I
But
did
would you agree? A
participate.
lot of them didn't. They were just like, oh, my friends told me to come.
No,
Yeah.
I
There's going
actually,
to be a kegger.
I'll tell you a story about that off the air one time.
Oh,
Which reminds me, our time is up.
Good to see everyone.
Thank you
good
for
to
very-
see you.
Absolutely. It's nice to
Merry
meet you.
Christmas.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.